On Friday afternoon, Minister of Public Enterprises Pravin Gordhan announced the composition of a new board. Let's speak now to Khaya Sithole in terms of the way forward for this new board and the confidence they may inspire in some. Khaya, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much for availing yourself this morning. Maybe let's start off with your reflections on that announcement of the 12 names yesterday, the new ones to Eskom's board.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers. Well, obviously, the reality of how we've ended up here is that all of this is still quite reactionary from the Department of Public Enterprises. They're really responding to the public backlash where we've been saying, look, not only are you failing to deliver on the operations by plunging us into stage 6 load shedding, even the simple things that you are able to do as a government, which is to simply put together a fully functional board, this seems to be the things that you're incapable of doing. So most of this is actually mostly a reaction to the backlash that the government has seen over the past couple of weeks. That being said, when we then saw the names being published yesterday, obviously it was very clear that the government had taken the view that the previous board, or at least what remained of the previous board, needed to be replaced, and they only kept one non-executive director, and of course the 2 executive directors are the only remaining members. So it's 3 of the old ones and then 12 of the brand new members. The key challenge that they'll all have to face is to essentially split themselves into 2, if you can put it that way. One team has to be completely focused on ensuring that the governance and the financial issues relating to how Eskom has been run over the past few years are addressed, and the other part of the team has to specifically ensure that the operations and the capacity of Eskom to actually deliver electricity is actually improved in the shortest term possible. So you'd imagine that the sum of the 15 of them will be able to fully understand the challenge at hand and should be able to tackle it immediately without any delay.
Is it just about the expertise that they possess, right? So you've got a number of engineers on the board, you've got a number of chartered accountants on the board. However, when it comes to interference, which is something that the Public Enterprises Minister was speaking about yesterday, that there should be no interference and Eskom should not be used as a political football. How important will that be? Because you can have all the skills that you want, but if the shareholder then intervenes when you're supposed to make those decisions, it does not defeat the purpose.
Yeah, I mean, the single greatest challenge that they all face collectively is to somehow find a way of keeping that same minister himself away from the boardroom. So, of course, it was mightily ironic that the minister talks about why interference should not be a thing when he himself has been instrumental in interfering in the operations of Eskom, particularly during the tenure of Pagamani Hadebe. So the big challenge that this particular board will have to face is to figure out a way of saying, once they've made a decision that they collectively believe is in the best interest of Eskom and the country at large, how do they ensure that that decision gets executed without the minister exercising his veto powers? You'll remember a couple of years ago, during the tenure of Mabuza and Pagamani Hadebe, they had reached a particular conclusion around the wage settlements and the size and the structure of Eskom, only for the minister to simply say, well, actually, you cannot do that because of the political fallout that you may experience. We also know from a former board member, Busisiwe Mabuso, that the interference wasn't just limited to those particular parts of the business. So until this minister himself learns how not to interfere, it is difficult to know whether that part of this conundrum is actually going to be fixed anytime soon. Of course, maybe all of this would be much better if we had a different minister to talk about.
What of this dynamic, right? So we've heard some voices that speak to the fact that some of the board members actually represent, or they are sitting on boards of private business. And then you've got the conversations around independent power producers and the conversation of privatizing Eskom, for lack of a better expression. The Minister yesterday saying that load shedding is not deliberate, or there's no deliberate effort to collapse Eskom, not on the part of the management or the part of the government. Yet you've got some sectors of society believing, how will this board then represent the interests of the everyday South African? Because independent power producers eventually will see electricity become expensive for the average South African in the future. Is there an argument to be made about that?
Well, there's a lot of myopia associated with that part of the argument, because one of the comments that has been highlighted is that the chairman of the board, the newly elected chairman of the board, also happens to be the chairman of Nedbank. And of course, Nedbank is in the business of financing some of these private sector players that are trying to bring electricity into the grid. That argument seems to be premised on the idea that government has an agenda of saying, let us create as many independent power producers so that we can destroy Eskom overnight. I do not believe that to be the case. My understanding is that with its best intentions, Eskom quite simply doesn't have the financial capacity or even, the resource capacity to be able to generate as much electricity as is needed in the short term. So the independent power producers tend to supplement rather than seek to face Eskom, at least in the short term. Whether in the long run the intention is to ensure that power producers that are independent and private in nature run and control the grid of the state, that is firstly not part of South African government policy, so it's difficult to sort of put much credibility to that argument at this particular stage. But of course, governments are free to change their policies as they go along. So the key issue here is that in spite of what people may think the independent power producers are capable of, all of them at this particular stage quite simply could never compete with Eskom. The scale that Eskom has built over the past 100 years is quite simply unmatched by any collection of private sector players. So unless somebody knows that those private sector players are about to unleash R1 trillion of investment in the short run and be able to compete with Eskom, they are literally a small fraction of the bigger energy mix in the country.
Appearing before Parliament to answer questions on Phala Phala, the President did also speak about Eskom. If you listen to his tone, he expressed confidence where the executives are concerned at Eskom. So he's very confident with the management of Eskom, and then you have some sectors of society that are calling for the CEO, the COO, or the management to really be moved around, if you will. Does the board have, or how much independence will the board enjoy in shaking things up where the executive is concerned, or how much should they have?
Well, I mean, when we talk about the president having confidence in anyone, we must also treat that with caution, because he also has confidence in some cabinet members who are completely ill-suited for the portfolios that they hold. The reality here is that the KPIs of the executives of Eskom do not ever make their way onto the president's desk. If they do make it all the way through political systems, the best they can do is end up on the Minister of Public Enterprises desk. So what the president was trying to highlight there is that according to the shareholder compact, it is the board that has the absolute authority to hire or fire a particular CEO. So as far as he's concerned, he doesn't have enough on his in-tray, at least tangible KPIs which he can use to assess the performance or otherwise of the CEO, because that is the purview of the board. If the board then comes to him and say, President, we've actually assessed the performance of the CEO against what we agreed they needed to do, and this is what we believe, or this is how we've assessed him, then only on that basis could he then say to us, actually, we have undertaken a process of reviewing the performance, and this is the answer. So until he has done that, he will stick to the line that says, well, I must have confidence in the CEO because I've put a board that is responsible for overseeing him, and that board has yet to come to me and say, we've got a problem.
Just finally for us, the Minister yesterday also spoke about the need for law enforcement officials, perhaps the police, to come on board and really help Eskom here, because as we have been made to understand, there's a lot of nefarious activity that is happening that needs the arm of the law. Your assessment on that?
Well, again, it's one of those very strange conversations where the minister seems to be telling us the type of things that we should be hearing from the CEO of Eskom or the Chief Operating Officer of Eskom. It is they who should be able to tell us that, look, guys, last week in a particular corner of the country, so much infrastructure went missing. We reported it to the police and nothing has materialized from that. So they should be the ones that are lobbying for law enforcement authorities to actually do something. It will be quite difficult for a minister to walk to a fellow minister and say, well, fellow minister, in a particular township something went wrong, because you can imagine that at that particular level they do not get involved at the operational level. So it's probably an element of the dereliction of duty by the executives of Eskom, or a very poor understanding of what their responsibility is towards ensuring that the integrity and the safety and security of Eskom's infrastructure is maintained. The minister has absolutely no voice in this particular case.
Khaya Sithole is an independent analyst. Thank you.